Good evening. I am Joseph Pereira, Chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the City of Fall River. It is 6 p.m. on Thursday, May 18th, 2023. We are meeting at One Government Center in the first floor hearing room. Pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, Subsection F, I hereby notify all persons in attendance that this meeting is being recorded with both video and audio devices by Fall River Government TV, Mr. Craig Salvador, in both video and audio. If anybody desires to make an audio-video, a combination recording thereof, please notify me now, and I shall make a public announcement of your intention. Our recording clerk this evening is Nina Kruger, sitting to my immediate right. Present this evening are our permanent members, Mr. John Frank, our vice chairman, Jim Calkins, our clerk, Andy Dupere, Rick Sahadi, and myself as chairman. Also, we have alternates, John Sylvia and Eric Kelly. Also in attendance this evening is the Director of Engineering and Planning, Mr. Dan Aguiar, sitting at my far left, and Chris Perino, I always mispronounce his name, our Assistant Planner, sitting at my far right. Nina, have all petitions to be considered been properly advertised and all interested parties notified in accordance with the rules and regulations of the Zoning Board of Appeals and Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40A?
Yes.
I declare the May 2023 meeting, regularly scheduled meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals of the City of Fall River open for such business as shall regularly come before it, May 18th.
Yeah.
I'm in a time warp. I remind all persons presenting before the board, including the petitioners, abutters, anyone in support, or anyone opposed to a petition, that your presentation should be limited to 3 minutes. Questions and responses must be directed through the chair. The board's rules and regulations direct the board specifically to look for information which supports the petitioner's claims. As such, the petitioner should identify and factually support the basis for the petition. I hereby advise all petitioners that all interested persons that this board is the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the board's authority exists pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40A, and is limited in scope and deals with the use of land as regulated by Chapter 86 of the ordinances of the City of Fall River. Additional permits, licenses, reviews, and/or approvals may be required for the specific development or use which is the subject of the petition before the board this evening. The clerks in the building, planning, engineering, and licensing departments are competent in the discharge of their duties as clerks. They are, however, not attorneys and are not competent to give legal advice. The action taken by this board has a real and lasting effect on the title of your real estate. I urge all petitioners to seek competent legal counsel before filing your petition and after the decision of the board has been made. For example, there was a city ordinance 2015-11, section 10-11, requiring site plan review. A copy of the ordinance is available at the city clerk's office or from the planning department. I remind everyone that the building inspector is the zoning enforcement authority, and you are here this evening because the building inspector has determined that your proposed action is contrary to the City of Fall River zoning ordinances. The city charter, section 9-18, mandates that all multiple member bodies develop and adopt rules or policies for public comment. We have adopted such a policy, which in short provides for citizen input on zoning board specific matters at the end of the meeting. If you wish to make such comment, there is a sign-up sheet on the table just outside the door. I disclose that an official copy of the zoning ordinance is available at the city clerk's office, and that one cannot rely on the online zoning ordinances. Are there any questions before we begin? There hearing none. Let me call case 01, David L. Pavale, care of Attorney Arthur D. Frank Jr., being represented this evening by Attorney Joseph I. Macy. This is property located at 1000 Blossom Road, map W-15, lot 30. The applicant seeks a special permit to construct a 40 by 80-foot garage exceeding height and area requirements in an R80 single-family zoning district and a WWD watershed and water supply protection overlay district. This was tabled last month. Attorney?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As stated, for the record, my name is Joseph Macy. I'm an attorney with an office at 209 Bedford Street in association with Arthur Frank. We have submitted a letter requesting a continuance, and I do that for the record now. When we last met and the board tabled this matter, the main objector seemed to be from the water department. We have reached out to them and to him. Mr. Frank has had a couple of conversations with him. We're waiting for some photographs that Mr. Labassiere said he would take and get to us. And we are also looking to meet with the water board, who haven't scheduled a meeting yet. So I think it would be productive for all concerned if this were continued again, so that we can do some further work. We haven't not done anything, it's just taken more time than we thought.
Attorney Macy, do you want to continue until June, or would you like to go further just in case?
I think it'd be safe if we could go one meeting past that, because the water board hasn't scheduled a meeting yet. When I checked with them today, they didn't have one scheduled. So if it could be continued to July, that would be good.
Okay, so the request on the table is for a continuance on the case of 1000 Blossom Road until our regular July meeting.
July 20th.
July 20th, thank you. Any discussion on that? Any comments, concerns? Hearing
Mr.
none.
Chairman, I move that the request be granted, that the petition be continued until the July 20th meeting.
Very good. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Second by Dan DePere. Any discussion? John Frank?
Yes.
Jim Calkins?
Yes.
Dan DePere?
Yes.
Ricky Sahadi?
Yes.
And Chairman Pereira, yes.
Thank you. Just a little bit of addition for the record. In our letter, we waived the time requirements, but I'll do it for the record now if that's necessary.
I can
I think it's the last line.
I can read it in. This is from the office of law offices of Arthur D. Frank to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Agenda item 01, David L. Pavale, 1000 Blossom Road. Dear Chairman Pereira, I hereby request that this matter be continued to your next meeting in June 2023, which we've changed. We are currently in discussions with representatives of the Watuppa Water Board to address the concerns raised at the April 20th, 2023 letter to the board. I further agree to extend the required time limit for the board to take actions on this petition as set forth in Mass General Law, Section 48, Chapter 48, Section 15. And,
I would suggest we do get a signature waiving the time, because that's June and we're going to July, so that letter doesn't really cover the extension that we just granted.
if I change this to July and have him initial it, would that be satisfactory?
I've done it for the record. I'll do it any way you want.
That would make my clerk happy. I will be thrilled. Attorney Macy, if I can, I have your autograph now. No, I have Arthur's. I just need your initial on that.
Permission to approach.
I think that makes it official.
You should have been a doctor, not a...
Big M.
Maybe, right.
It was the eye that took up the space.
All right, very good. Thank you. Have a great evening. Item number 02, I must recuse myself. Vice Chair John Frank will chair this particular item, and John Sylvia will stand in as the fifth member.
You have enough room?
Okay, we're calling item 02, Vertex Towers LLC, care of attorney Francis Parisi, 40 Estes Lane, map D04, lot 26. Counsel.
Good evening. The board recalls I was here last month seeking a special permit. We continued it to tonight, and in the last month, Ms. Kruger and I have spent an immense amount of time trying to figure out how similar facilities were permitted in the city of Fall River, and also with the help of Mr. Aguirre. It appears that most of the similar facilities were done by right, without coming to the zoning board. However, certain facilities were done with the grant of a variance from the zoning board. So just this past week, I applied for a variance, which I assume will be on the June agenda. So what I would like to do is continue this to the July agenda. It would be my hope that at the June meeting, the zoning board granted the variance, but in the unlikely event that they don't, I'd like to preserve the right to argue that a special permit is necessary. If the board were to grant the variance in June, then we would withdraw the special permit application.
I have no issue with that.
We're doing two separate that are tracking for the same item.
The only reason why I spoke with Ms. Kruger today, and what she said was that if I file the variance application, it will be heard after the continued special permit. So there's no reason to continue it to before the variance. So I just thought it would be better, and it's my goal to withdraw it, assuming the zoning board were to grant the variance in June, but I just want to preserve the right in case things don't go as planned.
Okay. Members of the board, any questions? Okay, can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Attorney Parisi, you submitted a letter as well, or you did not?
I did not, but I can
Okay.
certainly do one for the record if you'd like.
Okay, if you can, even on a piece of scrap paper, same with extension and waiving the time to act.
So I'll do that and let's give it to you.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Do we need to ask the audience?
No,
So I have a motion by Ricky. Do we
I
have a
second.
second? You have a second.
Second, James. Okay, John Silva,
Yes.
Rick Sahadi,
Yes.
Dan Dupre,
Yes.
Yes.
Jim Clark, and John Frank, yes. Okay.
July.
Fast, John. All righty. On to new business. Item number 1, Brian Rua, care of attorney Mark L. Levin. This is for 41 Crestwood Street, map P25, lot 23. The applicant seeks a variance to construct a garage with a living space above it, waiving side yard setbacks, in a single-family S zoning district. Good evening, Attorney Levin.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Madam Clerk, Attorney Mark L. Levin, 138 Rock Street, Fort Worth, Massachusetts. I have a modest request tonight. Basically, my client has a house that, when he bought it, is set dead in the middle of the property. He would like to add an additional bedroom, and at the same time, because of the way the configuration of the house is, where the bedrooms and bathroom, let's add, on the second floor of the house, he's going to put a garage underneath. So it'll afford an additional parking space to the property also. Either side of the property, we have the same problem because it was dabbed straight in the middle. So to design something that you could have a proper sized garage with the bathroom and bedroom up above, it is about 5 feet closer than it should be. The sideline setback is 15, he's 9.9. I call it 5 just to make it, to take care of a mistake if they go either way. He would have or could have put it in the back of the property, except for a sewer easement that runs through the back that serves the houses, not only his, but through other property there, so that's not available for him to do so. It would be a hardship to have him dig up the entire backyard and change the sewer line if it could be done properly for engineering purposes with 90-degree angles, which probably is not a smart thing to do. So we're asking that the house that's pre-existing since 1965, back then this conformed. Later on, the zoning changed from the 10,000 to 12,000 square foot. That makes this non-conforming, but it's a pre-existing non-conforming house. And he's asking you to waive the sideline requirement of 5 feet on the left side of the property as you look up Crestwood Street in order to have that. He's met with his neighbors and they have a petition for them where they all understand what he's doing, including the direct abutter, and no one had any objections to him making this variance. I think this will enhance the property itself and also be a benefit of the neighborhood because it, again, provides another off-street parking space to the property, and my client, obviously, the way the design would be, so that he wouldn't have a bedroom on the first floor and everything up on the top floor, is to have the bedroom and the bathroom on the same floor and the garage in the basement area. That's about it.
Couple quick questions. This is not a separate living unit, correct?
No,
So this bedroom attaches to the rest of
that's
the
correct.
residence?
In fact, I have, my client provided me the design, if you would like. It shows how the house is. I mean, this is existing residence, the bedroom's here, the closet's there, it's just part of the unit itself.
Now, I am
I
curious,
don't know if anyone else wants to look.
are they going to need a separate curb cut permit because there is already an existing driveway and garage under the house
You will need that.
on the opposite side?
That's to go to that board.
Questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, just for my city engineer, any concerns?
So I had a few notes. One was first, it is to remain a single family.
Yes.
2, I would like a plan that illustrates the sewer easement that Attorney Levin referenced should be added to this plan so that you have it to see and can hang your hat on the reason why this couldn't be constructed somewhere else. If it's a 5-foot easement along the rear property line, then it has no issue with putting an addition somewhere else. So I'd like to see the easement on the plan. The calculation provided for lot coverage, bringing us to 21.8%. The plan does not illustrate a new driveway and new asphalt. So I would like to see what the proposed driveway and what impact that would have on the new proposed lot coverage to make sure that a lot coverage variance is also not required. As I stated before, what ends up happening is we get these things to site plan review, and some of these little items have not been handled by this board because the plan presented doesn't necessarily provide that information. So I would like to see that information added to the plan to make sure that additional, or, I mean, Attorney Levin can say, okay, yeah, we're not going to exceed 25%, but then you may not be able to build a driveway to access your new garage door, so.
Yeah. I can't.
And where we need to add the easement to the plan anyway, I would recommend that you require that information be added to the plan. And the curb cut, yes, he will need another curb cut, not only from the engineering department, but when you're in excess of a 16-foot curb opening on your property, that requires city council approval. So there's no guarantee that that happens as well. But again, that's not for this board to determine. So there are other permitting steps that need to take place after the specific zoning relief is handled by this board.
Was it a matter of the layout of the existing house that made the owner go with that side as opposed to the opposite side? You could have got away with no additional curb cut just by modifying the driveway that already exists.
I'm guessing by the existing floor plan,
Yeah.
that's where it
Yeah.
made sense to put
I'm
an
sure there's
additional.
probably a kitchen on one
Yeah.
end of the house and you don't want to walk right into it.
Yeah, that's the problem. Everything else is set such that this was the more convenient area and the reasonable location than the other side, I'd still need a waiver to come before you anyway.
No, I realize that. I figured that was the case, I just wanted to hear.
Sure.
Do you know what the sewer easement is, or how wide it is?
don't.
I couldn't find one.
I was told that, you know,
Yeah,
that
so-
the sewer line runs back there, so
But that
that's,
doesn't mean there's an easement.
I
So,
think your
I
client
could
may
not find
have
one.
an answer back there.
do you know what the easement is?
There is no easement. It's my sewer line. That's-
It's your sewer, I thought it was an easement
It's
that
not,
went
it's
through.
not an easement for the neighborhood, nothing. It's my sewer line is there.
So where does your sewer connect to?
It's connected in front of the house, but it goes out in the back of the house and comes out. I don't know why they did it that way, but they
So
did.
can we get that shown on the plan as well?
Yeah.
All right. I misunderstood, I thought,
The other question on the, why that side, the other side, there's 2 bedrooms there, and I would have had to give one of them up.
Yep, that
Would-
would have made no sense, yeah.
do you know if the lot coverage would be more than 25%? If
I
the-
currently only have a 1-car driveway, and I only expect to have another 1-car driveway on the other side.
Yeah, but the building covers
The
also
building's only,
21. What would the driveway be if you added?
So
Again,
The lot's about
the
10,000.
the number
square.
that's provided from the engineer that says existing lot coverage, I don't know what that included. I don't know whether sometimes they just include just the house. So
Gotcha.
you want to clarify existing lot coverage to be all impervious surface.
Do you have
and
a
then-
number, what it is now?
He says it's 21.
He says it's 18.3%, but without giving specific square
proposed.
footages of each
Yeah.
item.
He says the
couldn't do the math.
proposed coverage was 21.8
Eight.
with the garage, but you're
But
right,
no
I don't
driveway.
see a driveway
So-
put in the plan, so I can't tell you. I wouldn't be the right guy you would be
Yeah.
to tell me what a driveway would be for that length.
The guy
Well-
will tell you is the engineer you're paying. That's-
Yes. I mean, if that is something that can be post-closing before issuing the decision to have that provided, and that provided it's under the 25%, and we put
Well-
the easement for the, oh, sorry, sewer line.
Well, no, there is no easement.
Sewer
So,
line,
so you don't
sorry.
have to show an easement.
But he has
So,
to show
so the
sewer
board just
line.
needs to look at the location of the exist, do you know where it even leaves the building? Is it like
Yeah.
the sewer line out the back of the
It
building?
leads out the back of the building.
Which, like which edge or where along the back of the house?
Probably about 1/3 over from looking at the house from the right side.
Okay, so it's over behind, like where the existing garage is towards that side?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually just outside the garage. If you, there's a utility room, if you would, it goes out the utility room.
Yeah. I mean, if the board wants to act and not grant a lot coverage variance, just understanding that at site plan review, they won't get a building permit and they'll have to come back here if it's in exceedance of 25%. It's up to you whether you want to wait a month or potentially 3 or 4 months by the time you submit site plan review and find out you have an issue. So
It's up to you.
it's up to you.
In my own opinion, and I'm one of 5, I would rather see it, try to get your engineer to update the plan, come back in next month.
Sure.
Ask for a continuance, come back in, rather than, as the Director of Planning has said, get all the way down to site plan review and have to come back in, because maybe you're at 25.4%.
Yeah.
We just, it's,
I wouldn't want to guess.
No, I wouldn't either.
So we'll ask to withdraw it and put it on.
No,
for
just
the-
table, don't withdraw.
don't withdraw.
I mean, to continue it, put it on for the next month.
Write that, what's that number? The site plan maximum coverage, what is
Do you
that?
think you can get
25%.
Ferlin to do it that
25%.
quickly?
And he's got 21.8.
You should be able
You
to.
should be able to do
I
it
think so. He's
desktop.
got
so-
everything. It's a
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah, he should be able to get that in
Please show the
tomorrow.
driveway with dimensions and add that
And put the
in.
sewer line, where the sewer line goes back there.
One other question.
Yes,
So the picture I'm looking at, the street is like 10 years old, so this hasn't been done, the road hasn't been improved since.
Hasn't been improved since, other than they put all the.
They just put new gas lines
in
down.
Right,
last
yeah.
year, so it's all.
it's still, it's chopped up,
Because I was
it's
looking
down
at
there.
it on Google Maps and it was, the road looked brand new, but it says 10
Yep.
years old. So
It's in good shape.
I just want to make sure, because if they go for, if there's a
Right.
moratorium and they go for a curb cut.
No, there's no moratorium. No,
Curb cut.
no moratorium.
All right, so we have a request to continue the matter until next month in order to complete these plans so that we're showing lot coverage, including the new driveway. We're showing the new driveway as well as showing the exit point of the sewer line from the house, just to ensure ourselves that we're not permitting a garage that's going to drop on top of the sewer line.
Move approval of the request to continue until the June meeting, pending a waiver of the timeframe, or required timeframe.
Yeah, because if necessary, we have to modify if we find that the lot coverage is different.
Right. That gives you the adequate time to do it, I would think.
So if the
Right.
lot coverage does need to be waived, then I will need to advertise for that.
We'll have to
Yeah,
advertise for a
right.
variance.
Additional
So-
variance.
Hey, you know what to do.
Yes?
Uh,
Thank you.
So the motion made by Jim Calkins, second please.
Second.
Second by John Frank. Any discussion on the motion? They're hearing none. John Frank?
Yes.
Jim Calkins?
Yes.
Dan DePere?
Yes.
Rick Sahadi?
Yes.
And Chairman Prairie, yes.
Thank you very much. Have a
Thank you,
good night.
Chairman.
Filling in. Yeah.
Item number 2, if I murder this first name, I'm sorry, Glacy Kelly Boza Freitas, 379 to 381 Robeson Street, map M15, lot 43. The applicant seeks a special permit to convert the existing ground level space into a retail store, waiving zoning requirements in a G General Residence Zoning District. Good evening, please identify yourselves for the
Hello,
record.
so this is my mom Glaze and I have son Thomas. So we're here today to apply for a special permit so she can open a business at our house. The business ain't gonna be disruptive at all because it's only gonna be open from 9 to 7. And it's gonna be bringing people to that place of the city. Because like, it's a lot of people like to buy hair clothes.
I'm sorry. I'm not quite sure what's going on out there. Sorry about that.
Okay. No
What's
problem.
the nature of the business again?
It's a clothing store.
Clothing store.
Yeah.
You said 9 AM
So,
to 7?
no, 6.
7,
6.
PM?
Yes.
What's it? How many days a week?
Probably 5. Monday to Friday.
Monday through Friday?
Yes.
I like to shop on Saturdays, so you might want to extend those days.
Segunda, Sat- Oh no, she said Saturday. It's Monday to Saturday actually. My bad.
Monday, okay.
Monday to Saturday.
You're in.
Yeah, you can go.
I
ahead.
I have to be in this building every day now.
Yeah.
What were the hours of operation again? Did we hear that?
9 AM, 6 PM.
9 to 6, 9 a.m., 6 p.m. This was a business at some point. Do you know how long ago that was?
Quando é que foi uma business?
30 anos atrás.
I think it was 30 years ago. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Well beyond the limits.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions from the board? Quiet board. In that case, do we have a motion with any conditions?
We could ask the.
I'm sorry, public comment. Anybody here to speak in favor of the issue?
I had a question about the zoning, changing the zoning on that, wavering.
So what's being asked is that they be allowed to open up a retail facility
Yeah.
in the G district, the general zoning district,
Yeah.
and that retail use is allowed by special permit. So
Yeah.
that's what they have applied for, is a special permit to allow this activity to take place.
Is there anyone to speak in favor? Anyone in opposition? For hearing none, I will accept the motion from the board with conditions.
Is this a bifurcated vote?
Is it a bifurcated vote? You're just asking for,
A special permit, do we have to find that it's not substantially more detrimental?
yes,
And then. So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we find that the proposed use would not be substantially more detrimental to the area, and that we, well, that's the first part.
so we have a motion by Jim Calkins that we find that the desired application is, if granted, is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ricky Sahadi. Any comments, discussion? Hearing none. Ricky Sahadi.
Yes.
Dan DePere.
Yes.
Jim Calkins.
Yes.
John Frank.
Yes.
And Chairman Pereira, yes.
And
Best of-
now the second
the
part
second
is,
part.
I move that we grant the, a special permit as requested.
Okay, with hours of operations as specified.
Yeah,
Monday to Saturday.
right, Monday through Saturday, 9 to 6.
9 a.m., 6 p.m. Do we have a second on the motion?
Second.
Second by Dan DePere. Discussion? Hearing none. John Frank?
Yes.
Jim Calkins?
Yes.
Dan DePere?
Yes.
Ricky Sahadi?
Yes.
Chairman Pereira, yes. Congratulations, good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Item number 3, Taco Inc., care of Attorney Peter A. Salino, 580 Pleasant Street, 583 Bedford Street, and 584 to 594 Pleasant Street. Map M12, lots 34, 35, and 40. The applicant seeks special permit to demolish 2 existing buildings in order to construct a one-story, 55,022 square foot addition and another 2,053 square foot addition to the existing building, 1, as proposed. The applicant also seeks a permit to reduce the required number of parking spaces to serve the establishment per 86-445A of the Fall River zoning ordinance. The property is located in the CMD Commercial Mill Zoning District. Attorney Salino, good evening.
Good evening. For purposes of the record, my name is Peter Solino. I'm a lawyer at 550 Locust Street here in Fall River. I represent the petitioner. The engineer on the project is Jeff Tallman of Northeast Engineers, who's here with me this evening. As Mr. Chair read, the proposal is to demolish portions of the building. The gross expansion is approximately 57,000 square feet, and I will turn the presentation over shortly to Jeffrey, and then he can go over kind of the nuts and bolts of that. But the impetus for this proposal is because TACO wants to stay in Fall River. They have looked multiple times at other locations, but they like this location. For those of you who don't know what they do heavy metal machining and fabrication. Their pay rate is very competitive for this area. They have a 5-year plan for this site that is forecasted to create approximately 25 to 30 jobs over the next 5 years at a very competitive wage. And so they're trying to make this site work. And so the impetus for the relief tonight is that they want to stay in Fall River. So there are 2 requests here for special permits. One is in relation to the demolition or extension of the building, and the second is in relation to parking. And so with that intro, I'll turn over the presentation to Jeff to go over the expansion, what it is, where it is, and the parking calculations.
Good evening. As you can see on the plan that's before you tonight, the expansion to the building is going to be on the south side of the building, and it's going to be in the same general location as buildings number 2 and 3. Those 2 buildings currently total about 22,000 square feet gross floor area. So what we're proposing to do is to demolish those buildings and expand the existing building, building number 1, further to the south. The reason we need the special permit is it is an expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming building in the sense that building number 1 does not meet setback requirements along Bedford Street, in 14th Street. The new addition is going to meet the required setbacks that would be required for a new building in this zone. So it's just because of the existing building and adding on to the existing building that we need that special permit. The other request that we have is for the parking. This is a manufacturing facility, and under the city parking requirements, with the expansion of the building, it would be required to have 230 parking spaces on the site, given the gross floor area. Now, they know, having operated at this facility for a number of years, what the parking demand of the facility is currently. They currently work in 2 different shifts. There's a morning shift that I believe runs from 6:30 to 2:30, and then they actually have a gap in shifts between first and second of a half hour. So second shift would be from 3 p.m. to 11. So with those 2 shifts, their current demand, based on employees they have now and what the facility uses, is 85 parking spots for the first shift and 54 for the second shift. With the expansion, they've projected it out, and with the increased employees that would be brought along with the expansion, they're only going to be up to 99 parking spots, or 99 parking spots required for the first shift and 60 for the second shift. So to require the 230 parking spots under the zoning ordinance seems to be a bit of an overkill. So what we're requesting here is, would ultimately be a 41% reduction in the amount of required parking, and that is solely based on what they know their needs are now and what they anticipate they will be in the future. On this plan, you can see we have identified 78 parking spaces on the northwest part of the property. That's currently where the existing parking is for the facility now. Currently, I mean, the marking that's out there now and delineation of the parking spots isn't all that clear, but I estimate there's about 60 existing parking spots in that area now. So we would be increasing that from 60 to 78. In addition to the on-site parking, they own a parcel of land across 14th Street, on the opposite side of 14th Street, that is solely used for parking. It's just a parking lot, and that provides an additional 58 parking spaces. So the numbers that I'm giving you, the 136 total parking spots that would be with the parking across the street and the on-site parking here, it does factor in those 2 parking areas. Also shown on the plan, we had in dashed lines further to the south, we have identified an additional 24 spaces that could be added to the site if necessary. If in the future if their estimates are off and they need to provide a little bit more parking, they do have the ability to expand. The reason I don't want to commit to those right now is that with the addition, that area was going to be used for truck maneuvering and stuff like that. So I'd rather not impede that at this time if we don't need it. So other than that, it's a pretty straightforward project. It is a big addition. It's basically going to double the size of the facility. But again, we are taking away 2 of the existing buildings that are on the property. And from an engineering and traffic circulation point of view, that's about it.
Okay. So if I could then jump back in relative to why this proposal is not substantially more detrimental than what's already there. For me, it makes the site better. Having the buildings connected, I think, does a lot in terms of bringing things inside, keeping employees in-house, and opening up more of the parking area, as Jeff has depicted on the plan. As Jeff had indicated, I don't think there's a parking detriment here because of the split shifts with the half-an-hour gap in between. And the use is not changing, and it's not getting much more intense either. So I don't think you're going to be feeding more traffic into the streets, whether they be 13th Street, Pleasant Street, or Bedford Street. So I'd submit to the board that I don't think this is more detrimental than what's there, and it's an appropriate use of the property to keep a good business in Fall River.
As far as right now, deliveries and coming into the building materials, et cetera, we have the existing overhead garage doors on the 13th Street side of the building. Is that where all the docks are, or are they loading docks or just ground level?
There are some loading docks in that location, and there's some additional overhead doors. Like if you look at building number 2,
Right.
on the south side where access is provided, there is a means to get in from 13th Street, but also that site can be accessed through 14th Street as well.
Okay. And part of the new building will also have have additional overhead for
That's correct.
deliveries. So that eases congestion for materials coming in, materials going out by having I would assume, by having more available spaces that way. Very sound questions from the board?
Yeah, on your count of current number of used spaces, is that for how many employees? Is it a 1-to-1 ratio about, or is it a half of space per employee?
Well,
How many
the-
current employees are there in the first shift?
80,
80, and you said how many spaces for the?
60, with 58 on the other side of 14th Street.
Yeah, so you're
So
actually.
118.
Then you're using less than a 1-to-1 ratio. So adding 30 employees doesn't mean 30 cars, it might mean 20 cars, or,
Correct.
yeah, okay.
And they're projecting on first shift with the changes, 99 employees on first shift, 60 on second shift.
Yeah, so could break down to 60 spaces or something like
exactly.
that.
But if it didn't, there's the ancillary spaces you're talking about, right? In other words, if the 99 employees on the first shift,
Yes.
if the lot itself was not adequate.
The
there's an
on-site
ancillary
lot.
lot too, right? Which is how many? 58?
58, correct.
So total of,
136.
136, okay.
And you already have employees parking in that area, correct?
That's correct.
An additional lot. From engineering and planning.
Couple of comments.
Yep.
Just so that the board is aware, this property was granted relief in 2008 for this use to take place, and there were a few conditions in that variance that have not necessarily been adhered to. So this gives an opportunity to reinstitute some of those policies and those conditions so that we get this site cleaned up. I do think the proposal will allow them to meet some of those requirements, such as no outdoor storage. Currently now, if you look at your aerial, you'll see there is quite a bit of material that is stored on the outside of the building. So I would recommend that condition be continued over into whatever new grant that you allow, specifically where we now have limited area other than being right on top of any of the streets where this material would be stored. Now it's a little bit interior to the site that would not necessarily be viewed by a passerby or any type of traffic. So I would like that to be considered as part of it. Mr. Tolman, when you calculated the existing parking, is any of the building used for storage or warehousing? Because that's at a much less intense parking requirement. That's 1,500 square feet rather than 500 per space. So if you can make the argument, I've been in the facility, so I know that there is product stored and product shipped. So I think Mr. Tolman's calculation would even, or existing spaces required or proposed spaces required, would be even less than what he's calculating, because you are doing it 100% by manufacturing, correct?
Yes, I agree 100% that there is a warehousing function to this, but ultimately it is a manufacturing facility, and that's why we requested the special permit for the reduction in parking, just to cover that.
Well, I think you still need the reduction.
Yes.
But it may not be as great as what, I think what's being presented is the worst-case scenario. I mean, I don't know
Absolutely.
who has a manufacturing or processing facility that doesn't have some warehousing component within it. Enumerating that by square footage at this point, I don't think they could provide that, but just when you're thinking of it, understand that this is not 100% a manufacturing and processing facility where we've got hundreds of people online putting together widgets.
Right, it's all custom fabrication.
That there's a lot of different space and machinery and everything else that eats up space interior. So I don't have a real issue with the reduction in spaces. A couple of the items I'd like to be considered as conditions, these are separate parcels of land, so there should be an A&R plan submitted and endorsed combining all of the land together. You wouldn't get a building permit without it, but I would still make it a condition. I'm assuming somewhere along the line, there will be some curb openings closed on the site, and maybe the need for some others to be opened. Like, I'm not quite sure on 14th Street how those overhead doors may be accessed with vehicles. Maybe it's just pedestrian or forklift, I don't know.
Yeah, I anticipate there could be some tweaking on 14th Street as we move forward with the site plan.
Yeah.
If this does get approved, then we could certainly take a look at that. But just to backtrack 1 minute. The combination or combining these lots could potentially be an issue because several of them, I believe, are land court, which,
So you don't have to go to land court.
so
The
you just want
individual
an
land
A&R
court
plan.
parcels can still be separate. So just like
Yeah.
any singular parcel of land for zoning purposes, they can be merged. But there are land court parcel lines that will
Okay.
still exist.
Yeah.
That's understood.
Sure.
The height of the building, of the addition?
So I'd like to introduce Andrew DiGiamo, who's the project architect.
Yep.
And he could probably address that question.
For the record, Andrew DiGiamo, 4 Causeway Road, Sonnet. The building height is not to exceed 55 feet.
Okay.
And that's that entire addition, the major 55,000 square foot addition?
Yes, that would be the highest expenditure that would be on the building.
The district allows for 80 feet, so
Yeah.
that's no issue. I just want to make sure that no relief was needed for that. Site plan review. I think there should be, so this use was allowed with a couple of conditions. One, there should be no outdoor storage. 2, site plan shall be submitted to the planning board for review and approval. There was no site plan review in place at the time, but that doesn't mean that it shouldn't have been complied with prior to the issuance of the building permit. And then lastly, part of that was there shall be a minimum of 5% landscaped area with the goal of 15%. All work shall be performed inside the building. So I don't understand the condition of 5% landscaped area.
I know.
With a goal of 15%, but I do see potentially carrying over that 5%. Would be recommended. It would be nice to get some green space on this parcel, and I do think they have some room to do it, especially where, let's look on 14th Street behind the gas station that's over there. There's a little triangular piece of land there now, which I believe is asphalt. There would be no ability for outdoor storage over there. It doesn't look like there's any parking being proposed there. No reason why we couldn't provide some green space to shield that part of the building from view on Pleasant Street. And maybe some additional little islands that you see that are hatched out. Maybe we could make those landscaped to some degree. Not intense landscaping. Also along the intersection right at Pleasant Street and 13th, the radius corner, where really nothing is happening. To me, that would be the most important corner to provide some green space. At that intersection, it's apparently not being utilized for anything, and that would be the corner that would be most in view of anybody traveling on Pleasant or 13th, and that's currently out there now, that's not being used for parking. So I would recommend that you still institute the 5%. Where it goes, we can deal with that at site plan review.
We were adamant about that at the last time they came in. Something along that corner and then along either the 13th Street somehow, some way.
We can get the 5% if you take where the 24-foot dimension is over on 14th Street at the south end of the addition, where Dan had mentioned, go behind the gas station, all that area going around there until you get to the first dash line where the 11 potential future spots are. That would get us at the 5%.
Okay.
Okay.
That's all from me, Mr. Chairman.
And just consider that out of the corner. And again, you mentioned it, no fabrication outside. None of the work should be, I don't want to see cutting and
No work outside,
grinding
no storage of
of,
material outside.
Anything else from the board, Dan?
14th Street, the overhead doors, is that a dock or is that something you can drive in? Is it ground level?
That's going to be ground level, I believe.
So,
No dock.
no dock.
Yeah, that's ground level.
So you'll be able to.
Similar to the,
You won't be
with the
blocking
existing.
14th Street with a.
What exists now in the front.
53-foot trailer?
No, exactly.
It's only 24.
Yeah, any large trailers would be coming into the loading areas out on 13th Street.
Okay, anything else from the board before we go to the floor? Anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the project? Anyone here wishing to speak in opposition? They're hearing none. If there's nothing else from the board, I would entertain a motion to approve or deny.
Bifurcated.
Bifurcated motion.
Mr. Chairman, I find that the proposal will not be substantially more detrimental to the area and That's the first.
So the first part of the first of the bifurcated motions are that
We find that it is not.
find that the proposal is not more detrimental to the neighborhood. Is there a second on that?
Second.
You have a second, is that Dan?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. John Frank?
Yes.
Jim Calkins?
Yes.
Dan DePere?
Yes.
Ricky Sahadi?
Yes.
Chairman Prairie, yes.
And
Take a second.
I move that we grant the special permit with the conditions that all work at the site be performed inside, that a minimum of 5% landscaping be, or green space be provided.
No storage outside.
No what?
No storage.
And no storage outside, and that it be subject to work site, or,
Site plan review.
yes.
Combined properties.
And an A&R form filed for the
Combining of the-
combining of the properties.
Second.
Do you want to make any condition tying in parcel M12-8, where they're relying on that parking? Theoretically, there's nothing tying to that property. They could sell that property tomorrow. They may not be able to function, but if they decided not to stay here, then that property would not be going along with this one. You could make a condition that it remains deed restricted to provide parking for this parcel. Normally, I mean, it should have been part of the petition, if you're relying on those parking spaces. But that's up to you.
Can we,
Just make it a requirement to maintain the off-site parking, maintain a minimum of
X number of spaces, yeah.
50 spaces
50.
off-site.
Yeah.
That's 58, I think you said, right?
yeah, because trying to A&R a non-contiguous property is...
No, have nothing to do with the A and R.
Okay.
Your decision of zoning relief.
Yeah, and wherever those are, if they sell that, they gotta find another 50 parking spaces. Yeah,
Right.
I-
So it doesn't have to be specific to that, but that they need to provide a total of whatever you're saying. What do you have?
136.
136 provided now?
Yeah,
That somewhere, they need to provide 136 off-street parking. They could find another piece of land somewhere else.
Right, that's
in the
just the
area.
minimum.
add that to your motion.
Yeah, I just think that's the proposal, so
Yeah.
it's included in the proposal that we're approving,
It is,
so,
but we're depending on an additional lot, so...
That's not part of the application. So by deed, that parcel will not be encumbered by the zoning decision. So if you just want to do it by spaces,
But if we do it by spaces, then they have to find something somewhere.
somewhere, exactly, yeah.
okay, that
Total parking spaces.
the
be
total available parking spaces be no less than 136.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
On
Not
and
not
off-site.
specific to this parcel.
On
No,
or off.
Total
Yeah.
on or
On or
off-site.
off-site, yes.
Street parking.
Anything else? Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Second by Dan DePere. Discussion? In that case, on the motion, Ricky Sahadi?
Yes.
Dan DePere?
Yes.
Jim Calkins?
Yes.
John Frank?
Yes.
And Chairman Prairie, yes. Glad they're staying in town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 4. Scotty Viveras and Jennifer M. Viveras, care of Attorney Peter A. Salino, 15 Anderson Street, map D06, lot 16. The applicant seeks a variance to subdivide the subject parcel into 2 lots, leaving the existing single-family dwelling on one fully conforming lot and constructing a new single-family dwelling which requires parking, with required parking on another lot, waiving frontage and lot area in the single-family district. Attorney Salino.
Good evening. For the record, Peter Salino. In this matter, I represent Mr. Viveras. This is Scott Viveras. You probably recognize him because this is back to you after a repetitive petition. So factually, what we have is Scott and his wife live at 15 Anderson. They've previously been before the board with a proposal that ultimately created 2 non-conforming lots. They went to the planning board with a new proposal, and that's how and why we are here. So to reiterate, the new proposal is that the lot line was moved over to the east, which keeps parcel 1 conforming. As you can see, it's got 12,000 square feet in a S zoning district. You can see that the setbacks are all appropriate. So the nonconformities relate to parcel 2, which is intended for Mr. Viveris's parents, who are looking to move to a single-family home. The waivers needed by way of variance would be square footage, because we need 12,000, we have 6286 per the plan, and frontage. You need to have 100 feet of frontage in an S district, as the board knows, and as you can see, parcel 2 as proposed is 74.93. When I look at the hardship argument here, I think it's got to be the shape of the piece and the fact that it has frontage on 3 different streets and a huge side yard. Ultimately, again, the proposal here is that Mr. Viveris is looking to relocate his parents there, and I know the board constantly hears this type of thing and says, but what about when the parents leave? And that's why the new proposal is here, to make it better and to leave us with 1 conforming lot. And I'd submit to you that Mr. Viveris has certainly been through a lot, and I know that's not a legal burden, but he's been through a lot, he's gone through the process, he's come back before the board to request this variance so that he can divide this land and build a house for his parents. I've submitted to your clerk a petition signed by his neighbors indicating their support of the project. I don't think that the use is inconsistent with the neighborhood. The lot sizes are similar. I know there are 2 gentlemen sitting behind me who are here in favor of the project, and when we get to that part of the presentation, I'm sure we can hear from them. But ultimately, I would ask the board to allow the variance to enable my client to divide the land and build a house for his parents. Do you want to say anything, Scott? No? Okay.
One's my dad.
Okay.
Okay.
Beautiful house, beautiful piece of property, wonderful addition to the neighborhood. I commend you, it's lovely. I don't have any questions at this point. I just noticed that you do have a nicely constructed shed that falls on the property line. Not a problem when mom and dad are living next door, becomes a problem when, the house is sold at some future date. Just a consideration.
And my client has indicated he will move that if that needs to be moved or it's a condition.
I mean, at some point, it's gonna have to be moved. So.
Agreed.
I'm just curious about the fence line on the back of the property that's running at an angle and seems to be inside your property line.
Yeah,
Is that a neighbor's fence or?
No,
is it-
that's technically my fence. So the reason why, so her house is actually 1.5 feet from my property line. So if I put the fence right where my property line was, she couldn't get into her house. So I told her, I don't know if I can give it to her or just let it, it's like 8 feet now, 10 feet. So it's technically mine, but it's technically hers because she's been cutting it. But that's something that we did that in the beginning when I first when I first moved over there. I told her I wasn't gonna, she bought the house and moved in. I told her I wasn't gonna leave 1.5 feet away from my property line.
You're a good guy.
There was no point in doing that to her for a little piece of grass.
I wouldn't give it away because you're giving up sideline setback. That's a freebie at this point. From engineering and planning?
How long has she been using that space for, Have you guys discussed that
She just
at all?
bought it, Rick, 3 years ago? 2 years ago she bought it, the house.
But, I mean, even
I've been
previous to
cutting it
that,
right now for her.
Okay.
She doesn't have a lawnmower.
Just so that you don't have an issue down the road with an adverse possession claim at any point in time, even with past use, you may want to discuss with your attorney about granting a license for her to use the property. You'll still own it. What I would hate to see is that we're granting a variance to create a lot that's 6,286
Yeah.
square feet, that theoretically could be 1,000 square feet less if through the court system that land was taken from you. So you may just want to do it. It has nothing to do with this board voting
Yeah.
tonight, but you don't want
Put
to
it
create
this
an
way.
issue for yourself down the road.
If it wasn't about splitting it, because I have to split it by law. If my parents, I would just own the whole thing and just put a house on there for them, and I would give her that split.
Sure.
I would sign off and give it to
Yeah.
her, just because I'm not gonna move that. I wouldn't wanna move it, but obviously I know no one's gonna be living forever, but.
A couple of other things I'll add is that technically there is 81 feet of frontage on, is it Dupas?
Yeah.
Is that how you spell it? So a little bit more than the 74 that Attorney Salino had mentioned, so really less than a 20-foot waiver in frontage. The area, of course, is a little bit more. Building setbacks will be compliant to the district. I know, and as I represented at the last meeting, this is an area of flooding that the city has great concern about, and we've had complaints from another neighbors, as they should be complaining.
Yeah.
And I know this was mentioned at the last meeting, what I would like is a condition that both parcels be subject to site plan review, and potentially requiring some improvements to the single-family home,
Yep.
recharging some of that roof runoff into the ground, if we could.
Especially since this new proposed home is downhill from the existing single-family
Yeah.
home, so.
And I think that was offered at the last meeting, I think, by the previous council, I think.
So just so my property, we already have that.
Okay.
We're obviously willing to do it on the second one. It's not a problem.
Okay.
That's not a problem at all.
All right.
And then one other thing, there's no proposed deck on this new house? No?
No deck.
Okay.
Anything would be a patio in the back.
Again, only because theoretically you could look at Anderson Street as a side yard, and if you slid the house forward, then there might be some room for a deck
Yeah.
in the back, so.
We were thinking about going to Duper's front,
Okay.
but there's literally nothing over there besides woods, and I don't know
Okay.
if they wanna finish
Yeah, I mean, you
their
could
life looking at
cantilever
it.
over the parking spaces if you chose to.
Yeah.
That's fine, okay.
Anything else from the board? Anybody here to speak in favor of the petition? We have, sir, please identify yourself. No, you're right there. It was two fingers, I wanted both, no, I'm kidding. You-
Richard Fowler, 50 Anderson Street. I'm definitely in favor for it. Ever since they moved in, they've been great neighbors, and, his parents are really great people, too. It would definitely improve the area. We're a real tight group of, family-oriented neighbors, so we always get together, we never have arguments. Like you said, he goes in, cuts our grass, I go up there and I clean the snow for them, I go, we all help each other out, so another addition would be great to the neighborhood.
Okay, appreciate that, thank you. Anyone else to speak in favor? Anybody here to speak in opposition to the petition? And we also have, I will state for the record, and this will be part of the record, we have signatures from 6 neighbors, all contiguous or close to contiguous. So,
I believe there's only one that is contiguous that we don't have, right?
Because it's wetland or something. There's nothing there.
okay. Sounds good. Okay, if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to contain certain conditions if we make a motion to approve.
Make a motion to grant.
With the stated conditions of the city engineer.
Yes, the one thing that I do want to just make sure is when we put this line in, the shed's going to have to be moved one way or another.
Yeah.
Because that could fall into a problem down the road, so.
Just get it done now.
Condition that the shed be put on somebody's land.
Or you could make such a foolish lot line that you would stay 4 feet off of the shed and wrap it around, but keep the areas the same, so. It would probably be easy to keep it on your parents' lot.
Yeah.
That's up to you.
Whatever it comes down to.
Or if you want to move it, just move it.
And considering the drainage situation we know about, site plan review?
A site plan review given, yeah. It will have its own separate utilities, that's given.
Yes.
Second the motion.
Okay, motion made by John Frank, seconded by Jim Calkins. Any discussion on the motion? They're hearing none. John Frank?
Yes.
Jim Calkins?
Yes.
Dan DePere?
Yes.
Ricky Sahadi?
Yes.
And Chairman Pereira, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wish you the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
Item number 5, Durfee Trust Limited Partnership, care of Attorney Peter Isolino. 80 to 84 North Main Street and 0 Elm Street, map 10, lots 47 and 75. The applicant seeks a variance to convert the existing office building located at 80 to 84 North Main Street into 22 residential apartment units. The applicant also seeks a special permit to waive parking requirements in a CBD, Central Business Zoning District, an AOD Arts Overlay District, and an HD1 Housing Development Overlay District. It's a trifecta. The applicant proposes to use 0 Elm Street for parking.
Good evening. For record purposes, Peter Solino on behalf of the petitioner applicant, the Durfee Limited Partnership. The proposal here relates to a brick office building on the corner of North Main and Bank Street, be the northwesterly corner, directly across the street from Bank 5's main office at 79 North Main. The proposal includes converting the existing structure into 22 apartments, all of which would be one-bedroom apartments. The family owns a lot, a vacant lot on Elm Street, which is also depicted upon the plan. It's N10 Lot 75. And based on the engineer's analysis, they can fit 22 parking spaces in that area. So the relief ultimately is twofold here. First, we need a variance because the bylaw indicates that if you are between Pine Street, which if you know this area, we're right near Pine Street, but if you're between Pine and Morgan on North Main, you can't have residential on the first floor. So as a result, I've sought a variance. I've cited the section in my petition that requires that. So speaking to the variance first, to me, clearly the hardship is the odd shape of the lot and the pre-existing structure on the lot itself. When you look at it, it's not square, it's not rectangle. The back of the building is more narrow than the front of the building as it fronts on North Main Street. So ultimately, I think the hardship is the structure itself. And then speaking to the special permit component, we don't have 2 spaces per apartment. As indicated, there is an off-site lot, albeit not contiguous, right next, right in the neighborhood that houses 22 cars. But I think, when you look at the prongs of how the board can determine what's more detrimental, et cetera, on the parking component, I'd submit to you a couple of different things. When you talk about the peak hours of this site, you have Fall River 5 across the street, and you have the library to the north of the site, both of which are not open at night when residential people are coming home from work. To the south, you have Attorney John Mitchell's law office, which is basically street parking. And I would submit to you that Bank Street, North Main Street at night, and then Bank Street going across North Main to the east would also have a lot of parking. I don't think this is detrimental to the neighborhood. I think that we have lower demand for office space in this post-COVID world. We have an empty building that could be repurposed, and it's consistent with the downtown development plan. So I think it's a good use of a vacant building. It's a nice building, but it needs some work. And the proposal, I think, is suited well for what the city's trying to accomplish with new housing units.
Market rate?
Yes.
All one bedroom?
All one, yes.
Excuse me. Questions from the board?
So, do they own that lot?
They do.
On Elm?
They do, yes.
Tie it in. Anything else from engineering planning?
What I can offer is in an overall planning view, not just specific to this piece, is we're finding that as we are dealing with these historically commercial use properties of office space, we're finding that as we convert them to residential use, specifically low bedroom count residential uses, we're finding that we're actually creating on-street parking during the daytime. because you now have a building with X amount of square feet of office space. And when you calculate that out, and how many people, our bylaw says 1 space per employee. So when you figure out square footage of a building and you make a rough calculation, you come up with how many spaces commercially this building, if occupied, really with no permits, they could occupy this entire building with professional office space right now. The demand that would create in this neighborhood far exceeds and outweighs any impact that the much lesser required residential use at a different peak time would have. So where we're changing the use, we're not constructing a new building that currently does now not eat up parking. We're taking a use that has great demand for parking when occupied, and doing away with that and putting in a less intense use. So I know in years past, we didn't necessarily didn't think that way, but we're finding out as some of these are now implemented, these streets are empty, you know, for a good portion of the day. Other than like specifically around this building, there's always a demand just for the employees here. We're finding in patches the availability of parking, so we're actually alleviating an existing parking demand commercially during the day by converting these commercial uses to residential. On this parcel, on this petition, both parcels are listed as part of the application. So this zoning relief and this grant will encumber both parcels. So that N1075 is married to 80 North Main Street for title purposes. At some point in time, if other parking became available, if additional municipal parking was constructed in the area, the applicant would have the ability to come back and say, hey, listen, there are so many other parking opportunities, they could seek another type of relief to deal with the piece over on Elm. That piece on Elm was actually created by a variance. I forgot what year it was in, but I actually did it, to create 2 different parking lots, if you remember. That was part of N1027 to the north. And they broke it up so that this parking could be allowed for a different use. The parcel to the north is dedicated to another apartment building, which I think is the one right at the corner of Elm and North Main, Shaletsky. That's his parking facility back there for that use up front. So I have no opposition to the proposal, and it would be great to see this building occupied and having some life in that neighborhood during the off-peak hours of the businesses.
Interesting observation that we're actually gaining parking spaces during the daytime on street.
It's happening when when we're getting rid of the high demand. Now, again, these buildings aren't 100% occupied, but any one of these property owners, if they could find the tenants, could occupy them without any zoning relief or any increase in parking demand. So the neighborhood's kind of fixing itself with regards to parking.
Interesting. Anything else from the board? Thank you very much, Dan. Is there anybody here to speak in favor of this proposal?
Yes. For the record, I'm Ken Fiola Jr. I'm the Executive Vice President of Bristol County Economic Development Consultants. I'd like to offer testimony in support of this project. I think Attorney Salino and as well as Mr. Agia have actually crafted a very succinct and intelligent rationale as to why the project should be approved. It's interesting, we've been working years to try to repurpose buildings in the downtown, right? And we're getting to the point where these buildings are starting to be repurposed for market rate use, and we're quickly understanding now that as we're repurposing these buildings for residential use, that parking is an issue, right? Because we got all these upper floors to these buildings that typically are not being utilized. This particular building is just, vacant. It's on a historic register. It's nice to breathe some new life into this building. It helps stabilize the neighborhood. It's, it's an investment in one of the most impoverished census tracts in the entire city, and it's on our main street. It's, it's a signature property. So the repurposing of this building will now breathe new life into that whole neighborhood. You're going to be bringing in people that will have disposable incomes. Typically, what we're seeing with the market rate units is that sometimes it's empty nesters but a lot of times it's also young professionals that are using Fall River as a jumping off point to either work in the city or elsewhere. So I think this particular project, I think is, given its viability where it is, and it also complements the proposed Bank Drive $12 million enhancement to their building across the street as part of their corporate headquarters. So again, private investment taking place on two corners of North Main Street and North Street, and that's Bank, right? North Main and Bank?
Yes.
Yep. So you got two significant projects there, and you got the library, the People's University immediately to the north there. So again, I just think this bodes well for more, and you're gonna see these things coming. At some point, we're gonna have to figure out this parking, and I'm not saying that tonight's the it, but a lot of communities are eliminating parking requirements, right? Because you want to get some of these buildings done. So in this one here, I'd just like to offer support, and it's in keeping with the urban renewal plans and the overall revitalization. It's in a historic district, and it just, these are the types of things we've been working on collectively for years to try to accomplish. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you, Ken. Anyone else to speak in favor of the project? Anyone to speak in opposition to the project? Hearing none, I would accept a motion on the variance. Our variance is to basically to allow residential units on the first floor of a building between Pine and Morton, is it?
Pine and Morgan is the district, yeah.
Okay. And that's the only relief that's being sought. And
Then we get
And
the
with the-
special permit.
the special
Permit for the
permit for the parking. Yeah.
Motion to grant.
Okay. Any conditions, motion to grant on the variance?
Yes.
We should separate those.
Yes.
So the variance to allow residential units on the first floor in the span of Pine to Morton Streets, which would not normally allow that.
Again, with the stipulation, all one family, one bedroom.
One bedroom.
And all one bedroom and parking, well, parking's a separate issue.
Yeah.
I thought.
We'll take parking
All
and tie it
all
to the
market
special
rate too.
permit.
Right, Attorney Salino?
Yes.
Market rate also?
Yes.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you, Ricky. Have a second on that, please?
Second.
Second by Dan Dupere. Discussion? Hearing none. Ricky Sahadi?
Yes.
Dan Dupere?
Yes.
Jim Calkins?
Yes.
And John Frank?
Yes.
Chairman Prairie, yes. We'll now accept a motion on the special permit to allow a reduction in parking, and parking to be, is it 22 spaces to be provided on 0 Elm Street. Lot specified is,
N10, lot 75.
thank you.
Move granting of the special permit.
So special permit to allow a reduction in parking with parking spaces in 1075 for 22 parking spaces at 0 Elm Street. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Second by Dan Dupere. Discussion? None. John Frank?
Yes.
Jim Calkins?
Yes.
Dan Dupere?
Yes.
Ricky Sahadi?
Yes.
Chairman Prairie, yes. Excellent. Item number 6, Troy Street LCC. Attorney Peter A. Saldino, 66 Troy Street, map N03, Lot 3. The applicant seeks a special permit to convert the existing mill building into mixed use with commercial tenancy on the first floor and 36 residential apartment units on the second, third, and fourth floors. The applicant also seeks a special permit to waive parking requirements. The property is located in the B1 local business zoning district, an AOC Arts Overlay District, and an HD1 Housing Development Overlay District. Attorney Salino.
Thank you. For the record, Peter Solino on behalf of the applicant, 66 Troy Street LLC. The building in question is sort of out the door here on the east, It says Merrill Building on the top. It's an existing mill building. Currently, the second, third, and fourth floors are not fully occupied. Historically, there have been commercial tenants in there. The proposal is 36 apartments. The count is 35 one-bedrooms and 1 two-bedroom on the second floor. And it's all by special permit. So the argument from my perspective is, as we just talked about on the last petition, what could be done here without permits and without zoning relief? The building measures approximately 35,000 square feet. So even if you were to take away some area for common areas, stairwells, bathrooms, etc., there's a lot of usable space. And in the district, professional office space is allowed. So I would submit to you that mathematically, probably you could have a significant amount of employees requiring as many, I would say, as 170 parking spaces for that use without permits. And so I think, similar to the last petition, I'd argue to you that there is less detriment than that by going with a concept like this. And more specifically, when you look at 445, it says that the board can grant special permits for reduction of parking, and the board should consider things like peak demands at different times, the age of the occupants and their characteristics, and the availability of on-street parking and nearby parking facilities. So hitting those in sequence. First, peak demand. So the building is immediately to the east of Bay Coast Bank. People Incorporated owns the parcel to the west. You have the fire station and the former American Wallpaper to the north. You've got a Bristol County Savings Bank, and you've got this building, Government Center. And the peak demand, in my estimation, for all of those places is probably 8 in the morning till 4 or 5 in the afternoon. The proposal, again, is mostly one-bedrooms here. And so as a result, I'd submit to you that mostly one-bedrooms are occupied by probably not even empty nesters, but young professionals. And those people, I think, are going to come home at 5, 6, 7 o'clock and leave in the morning to go to work. So when we're talking about the prong entitled peak demands, I would submit to you that the peak demand for a project like this is opposite the peak demand for this neighborhood. And I think that bodes in our favor in terms of the argument as to why this would not be more detrimental. Next, age of occupants and characteristics. Again, you have one-bedroom or studio-type concepts here. Based on my client's other projects in the neighborhood, the data tells us that we're going to have single people or young couples in these apartments. And as a result of that, I'd submit to you that based on the age and those characteristics, that, again, it's appropriate. I think young people use Uber. Young people take the train. I think it's not very likely that you're going to have a lot of extra traffic through a project of this type. Next, availability of on-street parking. So before I came in, I wandered around 6th Street, Troy Street, and Pleasant Street at about 5:45. And Troy Street, other than the fire department to the north, was empty. The street, which I believe is called Seneca Way, right out here from 2nd Street to Pleasant Street, was empty. And again, I think that illustrates the peak demand concept. I walked through the alleyway to 6th Street, and other than near Scotty's Pub, that was also all vacant. In addition, other lots. My client has a relationship with People Inc. and has 6 parking spaces in their lot across the street. You have the flat lot on 3rd Street, which, again, peak demand. It's mostly court and city employees that park there. And I think on the weekends and at night, that would be open, and that should also be taken into consideration. And lastly, I think the proposal is consistent with what's happened in the neighborhood surrounding these types of conversions. Looking at the police station, for an example, and some of the other projects locally. So I would submit to you that I think when you really look at 445, you look at the use of this building and what it could be without permits, that the proposal is respectfully submitted that it would be less detrimental than what could be there.
What's the size of the bedroom? How many, one bedroom, how many two?
Yeah, it is 35-1 and only 1-2. And it's just because of the shape of the building, I guess they can put a 2 in there.
Any other questions from the board? We're at an interesting juncture, as Mr. Fiola has pointed out, as Dan Aguirre has pointed out, that we've been scrambling for parking spaces and they're showing up. Kind of miraculous, isn't it?
I mean, if you go out there, go walk around there now, and it's, what we're hoping, in the planning department, in the redevelopment authority, conversations with the administration, something has to come first. The mindset always was, okay, if we permit commercial users, whether they be restaurants or office space, or, we've done a lot of that, and that keeps these restaurants busy during the workday. So we're now hopefully taking some of these commercial spaces. We're gonna hit a balance at some point in time where the amount of residential units puts such an influx of population that the demand for additional commercial services, restaurants, bars, anything in the vicinity, we're going to be creating a need, kind of opposite if you build it, they will come. This is, we let them all come, and then we're going to have the ability to build around them and provide the uses, and we'll have entrepreneurs of business acumen that want to provide services to these tenants, because they're going to demand it. We haven't hit that breakneck point yet where we're seeing a problem. So in the planning department, we will be looking at different types of zoning mechanisms for existing structures and the change of use of commercial structures. New construction, where you can't make the argument of, well, we're eliminating the higher intense use, those will still need to meet the parking demands. So we're crafting some zoning that allows that. Until that happens, we can't impede progress to that extent yet. So I understand Attorney Salino's argument. I don't disagree with it. I mean, I've seen it with my own two eyes. Very similar petition to what the police station offered. And again, every petition is different. But I think it's clear in the vicinity of this era. I mean, if we had, let's say, the Ben Nathan Building or 3rd Street and some of those other projects that weren't required, were required to provide on-street parking at a rate of 1-to-1, maybe we'd be saying, or maybe we'd be seeing an issue. But because those have come in, the dust is kind of settled and we understand the use a little bit, there's nobody parking on our streets at certain times of the day. So rather than trying to force a high-intense commercial user that's going to create a problem quicker for us, I think this would be a more appropriate use for the building. That's all.
Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
Anything else from the board before I go to the floor? Anyone here to speak in favor of the petition?
Yes. Once again, for the record, Ken Fiola, Executive VP, DC, EDC. Again, very similar to what we just discussed in the previous applicant. And in many ways, the chickens are coming home to roost, right? Because when you look at the zoning here, we have local business. We also have an arts overlay district, which was designed to accommodate commercial and residential use. And then we have a housing development overlay district. So what we've done is we've actually encouraged residential uses of these properties, maybe not with, thinking through how all the parking is going to be handled. But clearly, this project probably represents somewhere in the vicinity of a $9 million investment. The market and the private market itself, they're going to dictate whether or not these types of units work without parking, right? If you got a developer that's willing to put $9 million in with the belief that he can sell these things with on-street parking, the private sector is going to either prove that to be false or true, and they're going to be occupied or unoccupied, but at the end of the day, you're still going to have a $9 million investment there. And I think, this is, again, not to jump on a dead horse here, but this is what we've been talking about doing in this central business district area. The center of the city is bringing in market rate units, bringing in people with disposable income, bringing in people that are going to support the establishments in there. Hopefully, more people will create more establishments, and we're going to create a new quality of life, and it's going to be vibrant, and it's going to bring in arts and culture and different types of activities. The parking issue will take care of its place, as Attorney Salino said. At night, you can park anywhere. During the day, it's usually, employees of some of the businesses, including Government Center, that park on these side streets. but it's a reverse curve. Most of these people would be out working themselves, and they'll come home and they'll utilize those parking spaces at night. And on weekends, there's plenty of parking there. So, you know, if you look at, you know, the investment that's taking place, you know, around it, between the Ben and Nate building, the Third Street building, as well as the ILGWU, you're looking at private investment in excess of $15 million there. And in all of these buildings, including this building here, it's underperforming. You know, there's no demand for that type of office space for commercial use. And the return on investment of trying to convert it for commercial use is no longer there. So I think either we're gonna have a lot of empty buildings if we don't start repurposing these things, and repurposing them for residential use, I think, is in keeping what the city's always wanted to accomplish. And, you know, as we, you know, now we're working on a plan to include south of the Academy building in a historic district, so that those projects themselves could be eligible for federal and state historic tax credits. And we're going to be having the same discussions here about what happens when we fill those second and third floors of those buildings, right? So I think we're at a juxtaposition here, but I would hate to thwart development when we're worried about parking, when the real risk of this project is the developer taking the risk, because he's going to test the market to say, okay, are these units marketable with on-street parking and limited off-street parking? And I'm hoping that the board can move it forward, see how it moves, you know, along, and, you know, if it's successful, then we all achieve the objective that I think we wanted to achieve. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Anyone else to speak on behalf? Anyone to speak in opposition to the petition? Hearing none, I'll turn to the board. This is a special permit. We will bifurcate and address the detriment or lack of detriment to the neighborhood, and then the granting itself. So I would entertain a motion at this point.
And then, just to reiterate, just to make sure that you all understand, there will still be a commercial component to the first floor of this building, which, well, will still feed, will feed the area. But again, there are off-street parking spaces to accommodate the existing use that they have there now with no problems during the daytime.
Are you asking for the first motion, that it's not substantial, more
Yes.
detrimental? I would make that motion.
Second on that, please.
Second.
By Dan?
Just to be clear, there are two different special permits that are being requested.
Correct?
Yes.
So which one is your motion pertaining to? I know it pertains to both ultimately, but.
Yeah, well, we're separating both special permits.
Yeah.
So the first special permit, Mr. Chairman, is for
Mixed use alteration.
Mixed use. So my motion would be that mixed use is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Thank you, Jim.
I'll second that.
We had second from Dan. Discussion on the motion. John Frank?
Yes.
Jim Calkins?
Yes.
Dan DePere?
Yes.
Ricky Sahadi?
Yes.
And Chairman Prairie, yes. Okay, then on the special permit itself for the mixed use,
I'm sorry, I think we just did mixed use and we're talking about parking now.
Well, we just did the
It's a
first
bifurcated
part of
decision,
the,
like,
so
first you
there'd be
deal with
four
the-
votes
Four things.
altogether.
Okay.
Technically, 4 votes, yes.
So I move the granting of the special permit for the mixed use.
conditions. Just think we have a need for any. Motion's made, can I have a second, please?
Second.
Second by Dan DePere. Discussion, they're hearing none. Ricky Sahadi?
Yes.
Dan DePere?
Yes.
Jim Calkins?
Yes.
And John Frank?
Yes.
Chairman Prairie, yes. And then on the parking matter, which is also a special permit, do we need to bifurcate that one?
You might as well.
Okay. So is the,
I find that the special permit waiving parking will not be more detrimental to the area.
We have a second?
Second.
Ricky Sahadi on second. Who's on first now? Discussion? Hearing none. John Frank?
Yes.
Jim Corkins?
Yes.
Dan DePere?
Yes.
Ricky Sahadi?
Yes.
Chairman Prairie, yes. Then on the special permit itself for the reduction in parking or waiver on parking?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we grant the special permit waiving the parking requirements.
Good, do we have a second?
Second.
That was a toss-up. We're going to John Frank on that. Second discussion? Hearing no discussion. Ricky Sahadi?
Yes.
Dan DePere?
Yes.
Jim Corkins?
Yes.
John Frank?
Yes.
And Chairman Pereira, yes.
Thank you.
All right, item number 7. Don't even stand up. Parallel Productions Solar Energy LLC, care of Attorney Peter A. Solino, 109 Howe Street, map B-20, lot 1. Applicant seeks a special permit to convert the existing mill building complex, a mill complex, into 2 separate lots, creating a multifamily development containing 40 residential apartment units on one lot, and leaving the existing mill building on the second. The property is located in the CMD, Central Mill District.
Good evening. For the last time, for the record, Peter Solino on behalf of the
Last time tonight. Last time tonight.
For the applicant Parallel Products Solar Energy LLC. The engineer on the project is Farland Corp. With me is Christian Farland. As far as the proposal is pretty interesting to me. So we have an existing mill site. The property address is 109 Howe Street. The existing mill is there. I've driven the site and walked around a little bit. And then off of Crawford Street, there's a big parcel of land that's contiguous to the west of Cook Pond. And so our bylaw allows in a CMD district for more than 20 units by special permit. So the request here is to divide the lot. The lots, if you will, are the housing lots to the north, I'm sorry, that would be to the east, and the mill lot to the west, to divide them so they'd be separated. That could be done via Form A plan, and to have a multifamily development consisting of 40 units of housing on the parcel to the top of the screen orientation on your plan, which is to the east. The unit mix includes triplexes as depicted in the picture, single-family homes, and duplex units. The intent of my client in this case is to have a private road that would not be a city road, and it would be maintained by an association. Each unit would have sufficient parking for its occupants and would access city streets back on through Crawford and Howe to South Main. So the only request here, again, to reiterate, is a special permit. A variance is not required for the proposal. I would submit to you that when we talk about detriment here, I think, again, what could be done there by right in terms of manufacturing, noxious uses, noise, smoke, shift work, is a lot more detrimental than what this proposal would be. I think this proposal is very consistent with what Mr. Kafori is doing a little bit to the north. I think that's working well, and I think that the city should really adopt more projects like this, because we have these mill sites that are tucked into neighborhoods throughout the city that are empty, dilapidated, and something like this I think is a really viable project, and the fact that the developer's willing to maintain the streets as private ways, I think is also a boon to the city. Because I've had other projects where we talk about road acceptances and a variety of things. So I think it's a unique proposal, but I think it's a good proposal, and I do not think there's detriment here. I think it's less detrimental than what did happen there as a mill site and what could happen there as a mill site. I'm happy to take any questions the board would have about the proposal. And again, Mr. Farland's here. He's got some nice color drawings if anyone wants to see something other than what's up there, but we're happy to answer any questions.
These will be rental, these will not be condominiums.
The intent right now is to condo. Yeah,
Okay.
so the ultimate intent is the condo.
Okay. That makes more sense, I like the tax base plus. You better
get out of here.
What's the use of the mill building?
Right now, it's empty, and it's not really, there's no viable use for it unless we can do something economically with this piece.
There's no relief being
There's no
granted
relief,
to the
we're
mill.
not asking for any relief on
No,
that.
it's just as if we're dividing the property.
They could, yeah, so they could have divided the property prior to coming here.
Right.
Just to try and bisect the project.
So in order to enter off Crawford, you're gonna get rid of that ramp that rolls up to the mill building currently?
I would think so.
And Mr. Chairman, for the record, Christian Fallon, Principal Engineer and President of Fallon Corp. That is correct.
Because I think I trespassed when I went in there.
Attorney Salino, I'm just wondering, you said the intent is
Yep.
that they would be condos. Are they going to be marketed as such?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so they're not going to be marketed as apartments with the conversion to condos eventually. Marketed as condos.
Absolutely.
I had a question about parking. Now, you're saying that the adequate parking, are you counting the interior of the garage as a space as well, or is it gonna be like 2 spots on the outside? Is it like a double garage?
Yeah, so it depends on the building you're talking about, but the duplex style, which is in the top of the plan, I don't know if you can see it up behind me there. So there's 2 spaces outside the garage and 2 in, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so it'd be 4
And-
total.
And they're actually, those are actually double garages too, so.
Okay, that was my concern.
And then on the triplex, you have the, similar, but 3 and single family.
My reason is usually when they call that out and they say one's gonna be inside, one's gonna be outside.
It's only 2.
You go by and all that stuff is inside and you can't,
Yep.
like Lower Stevens down behind the new Cumberland Farms.
Yep.
It's, you can't get down the road.
Makes
All the
sense.
cars are outside on the road. So, but all the streets are gonna conform to, for fire apparatus, safety equipment.
Absolutely.
Okay, you've got the drainage easement to the pond, not our purview, but I was just kinda curious, because it is wet back there at the end of the cul-de-sac, okay. Any other questions from the board? You're right, it's an interesting app.
Yeah, I thought it was a very unique project.
No other questions? God, you guys, it's so quiet. Anybody here to speak in favor of this petition?
Yes. Ken Fiola, Executive Vice President of BCDC. Obviously, we don't have a parking issue here, so this is something different than what we discussed earlier tonight. But I think the real point that we're talking about here is, the mill itself has sat vacant for a number of years. The developers are taking on this property to repurpose it and, create residential use on this property, condos. This is all going to be new taxable value and growth for the city itself. And again, there's going to be a market for these types of units within the city. And it also opens up, one of our greatest assets, and it's an underutilized asset, of Cook Pond, right? If you look at Cook Pond and, the aesthetic and the environmental, portions of the pond itself, it's going to, allow the public to really utilize that pond for fishing and other types of recreational assets. And eventually, there will be a plan that comes forward for the reuse of that mill that's going to be in keeping with the overall development that this particular project is setting the stage for. So I think, again, it's a very well thought out project. There is a demand for this. It results in new growth. And it's going to provide opportunities for people that may not want to own a house, but would rather own a condo, less maintenance, lock it up and move on, right? You don't have to worry about those things. And it's in the south end of the city where we don't have a lot of development, a lot of development's taken on the waterfront. And again, the repurposing of a mill property for this use, I think, is going to see more and more of this coming forward as some of these other mills are in the process of being sold right now. So it's going to be a busy season for the zoning board over the next few months, because you're going to see more repurposing of these types of properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak in favor? Anyone to speak in opposition? Sir?
Hello, my name is Eric Piloff. I reside at 56 House Street, directly across from the mill parking lot that currently resides there. I have no qualms against responsible development for the area. My concern really is based upon the volume of traffic that's going to be created there. House Street ends and it takes a sharp right onto Crawford. That's a major cut through for the city because it's the first street that wraps around Cook Pond. So during those peak hours of morning and evening, there is a lot of traffic that comes through there. Additionally, back in December, Mr. Fiola announced that that mill itself might be another 100 units. So when you factor in all of that development there, I'm not sure that that street currently constructed would support all that. The other thing I'd be concerned about is you have Mitchell Apartments right at the corner of Howe and South Main. A lot of elderly people are walking in this area. Additionally, you have Nick's Hot Dogs, so you've got plenty of people parking on South Main, a lot of pedestrian traffic in that area. And I think I would wish you would take a look at the number of traffic accidents that have occurred on the corner of South Main and Howe Street. So it's a pretty busy area. That's all I can say.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak in opposition? Sir?
I'm not necessarily opposed, but could I see the map, the code map, is that?
Sure you can.
Sure. That, you know, I live right near there. I've been on House Street since 1979. And when that mill was actually, when people were working there, and now it's abandoned, and I've seen it all. I agree with Eric said. There is a lot of traffic there, more than you think. But do I understand this correctly? The parking lot's here, the mill's there, the housing is going to be on the opposite side of the mill?
Yes, going closer to Cook Pond.
Okay, and how many acres is that? The previous owner told me 10, and then he told me 15. I know it's,
Comes out to be about 20 for the residential group and 6 acres for the mill building.
yeah, I was just, wanted to make sure I heard it all correctly. No, I don't oppose it. I have a couple of concerns, but, you know, anytime there's a change, people wonder, you know, who's your neighbor going to be?
Sir, what's your name and address for the record?
31 House Street, H-O-W-E, Tom Lawler, L-A-W-L-O-R.
Thank you.
You know, I have to say, on House Street, I've been there since 1979. My neighbor is 84. Her father-in-law was born in that house. Mr. Pilot, I knew his uncle and his aunt that owned the house before him. And on the corner is our paper boy. He's 54 years old. So you know, whatever happens, it might be something in the water. People come there and they don't leave. Yeah.
Thank you for your input. Anyone else to speak in opposition? Okay, they're hearing none. I turn to the board. This is a special permit, which we'll have to address, and we'll bifurcate this one as well. We'll address the impact to the neighborhood and then the special permit itself. I'm sorry, Dan, anything?
I don't have much to offer, just that, you know, this was all zone industrial land a number of years ago. And because of the lack of need for industrial space, new zoning was put in place, calling this commercial mill district that allows this type of use by special permit to create these kinds of opportunities. With regards to the traffic aspect of it, this site is not only accessed by House Street, you know, there is Crawford and the additional streets that come running off of it, that traffic will disperse in different directions if need be. And we're not talking about multiple hundreds of homes that'll be out in this vicinity. So just like any other city block that would provide for this number of homes, you know, yes, you will get traffic associated with it. However, if there was an expanded commercial use, what could be the impacts to that site as well?
Yeah, if you had shift personnel and that type of thing.
And again, if you don't know the neighborhood, this is directly adjacent to the Fall River Ready Mix facility, gravel operations. So for someone to take on a property like this in that vicinity, it doesn't come along often, for sure. So now we have an area that does not, a huge land mass where Ready Mix operates out of, that isn't being utilized for residential use. So again, offsetting peaks and offsetting demands for traffic. So I don't see a concern. If there is a need for upgrade to any of the streets during site plan review, we'll address that. And try and get the applicant to provide some additional sidewalks or roadway improvements and stuff like that.
And with site plan, everything will have to come in front of you for
Absolutely, well, and Conservation Commission too.
private way, right, for
Conservation,
private
because-
way
Yes.
designation.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Christian, maybe you consider Farland Way Chase Circle instead of Farland Circle.
We can.
He's a New Bedford boy, I don't think he gets the reference, you wanna?
No, he knows.
He knows it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right.
Anything else from the board before we're at the point for motions? So motion regarding the impact modification on the special permit itself with any conditions.
I'll make a motion that's not more detrimental.
Have a second on that? Second. Second by Ricky Sahadi. Discussion, none. John Frank?
Yes.
Jim Calkins? Yes. Dan DePere?
Yes.
Ricky Sahadi?
Yes.
And Chairman Prairie, yes.
I'll make a motion to approve special permit, providing for 40 residential apartments.
40
Residential.
40 residential.
Housing units.
Housing
condo
units.
And we've got sufficient parking, et cetera, and
Site plan
planning
review.
and conservation are a given, so.
That's gonna happen.
We have a second on that by Ricky Sahadi. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ricky Sahadi?
Yes.
Dan DePere?
Yes.
Jim Calkins?
Yes.
And John Frank?
Yes.
And Chairman Prairie, yes.
Thank you.
You had a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Best of luck.
We'll get him next month.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
That's gonna be like the project
All right.
at the other end of the pond.
Yeah.
We are into, good to see you, Ken.
Yeah.
All right, discussion, review and discuss proposed update zoning board of appeals rules and regulations. Is that in our magical machine?
It is.
Like you're so awesome.
So as I mentioned previously, what you have in this is really just putting on some lipstick and organizing what was already existing. There's nothing new for the most part, but I did want you all to take the opportunity to read through it, because now would be the time to add, delete, or revise the way that we've been doing some things. So hopefully it's a little more legible. I have a problem with documents, multiple documents that you need to deal with one technical application, different fonts, different presentation. So that's really what the intention was of this, creating a more usable application, information that's valuable, and directing the applicant in a more efficient manner to provide you with a little more detail of what the specific relief is that you're acting upon. So that was the intention.
Everybody have a chance to go through these? I did lightly.
I did. Dan, did we change or did you look at the number of
I did not look at it.
petitions
I
that
didn't
day?
know, we actually had a conversation about it, because next month's meeting, we had what, like 11 petitions in one day? 13.
And 11 came in within the last,
So
hour.
currently now in the rules, it allows for, what did we figure out?
Currently, it's 15. You changed it on here to 25.
Okay. It might have been a typo, so
That
15.
typo.
I mean, that was one thing.
So if
that
you want to
I-
hold it to 15, so it's got to be a typo.
Yeah. It's funny, Ken Viola said, it's gonna get really busy, and son of a gun, there it is.
And again, you don't have to vote on it tonight if you haven't had the opportunity to look at it. There's no rush on this, so I'd rather get it right than get it quick.
I mean, that there, unless it's changed since the last time I
Nope,
looked.
I haven't changed anything.
There were.
I haven't changed it since
Many typos.
last January
and-
when I
and-
started. Yeah, so it was marked up for typos and stuff like
Yeah.
that, but no edits have been made.
Yeah. I just wonder if one thing we might want to include is what is a alternate who is not filling in on the night allowed to participate? That we state in there that they're allowed to participate in the discussion.
So we can
and
add,
just-
so that's Mass General Law, but we can put in there specifically and reference what Mass General Law states that that person is allowed to.
Yeah, I mean, where you define the
Yeah,
others,
or where it
I
goes.
just
Yeah, that's
wondered
fine.
about that.
Well, let me put it this way. If we haven't looked at it, if everybody hasn't taken a read through it and made notes on it, there's no sense us voting on it tonight.
No.
Obviously, input from the alternates is very important because you guys are sitting at any moment. I might take June off if we got 13%.
This has been emailed to us.
It's right around the time my daughter's having a baby, so.
I thought so. This isn't new.
So do we want to pass on this, but we're all going to do pinky promises that we're going to read through this and make some comments on it.
And if you wanted printed versions, just come by the office, we'll print them, that way you guys can mark them up in red, or however you want to deal with them, get them back to us, or give them back to us at the next meeting, we can incorporate those changes.
And that way, when we get down to it, if we've got changes, we can share them, get them around via email, get them into the planning department, and even though we've got 13 petitions and God knows how many continuances, we may be able to just bang this out. Question is, one thing that drives me crazy when you go into a town, whether it's a bylaw, rules, et cetera, are all the boards, are we shooting for all the board stuff to kind of look the same format-wise, et cetera?
Of course.
Well, don't say of course.
Listen.
I know what you're shooting for.
Well, no, and luckily right now, I'm in charge of all of them.
You're in a position,
So
so.
now's the time to strike.
Now's the time. 'Cause it is insane. You open up one thing and it's, done in 1986 and it's got margins and.
I know.
8-point Helvetica, whatever. It's like junk. I hate it. Looks like the town doesn't know what it's doing. We can fool them with good.
I fooled people for a long time.
Good craftsmanship. Do we need a motion to pass this off till next, to continue this?
It's just a discussion.
It's just a discussion, you're right. We
Yeah.
don't need a motion on that.
That's fine.
All right.
Very good.
Promises all around. We have citizens input, none. There's no citizens. Approval of minutes from April.
No, table that.
You're gonna table that. We have one piece of correspondence, I think everybody got it, maybe not.
Yes.
Oh, it's really just a note.
Yep, it's okay. It's fine. It's a thank you note, and please do this for me. I think
Well, I
we-
wonder
We do.
if that might, I mean, if that's something we want to go, would that even be included in the other?
Well, what happens is it doesn't, they're not forced into site plan review technically is what he's stating.
Yeah.
If you would like all of them to have to go to site plan review, then that would be, any one of those subdivisions of multi-unit buildings. You can just make it, utilities have to be separated, subject to site plan review, and you can make that be your standard conditions on all of those from now on.
Yeah, we discussed earlier the possibility of just almost getting a list of standard, and you'd say, okay, I want condition
Yeah,
A, B,
that's what we
C,
do
and D.
That's what we do for the Conservation Commission. We can give you a list of what you deal with, so you have
The
what.
standard
Just a
ones.
cheat sheet, so that
Yeah.
you know, okay, would this apply? But you would have to make a specific.
Include them
yes,
specifically,
yes.
yeah, you say which ones you
Yep.
want included, yeah.
Cheat sheets are a good thing.
We do need a motion to table.
So,
We do. Oh, yes, on approval of minutes, we need a motion to table that.
Motion to table.
Dan DePere made a motion to table,
Second.
mumbled the motion to table. Second by John Frank.
Yes.
Discussion? None. John Frank?
Yes.
Jim Calhoun?
Yes.
Dan DePere?
Yes.
Ricky Sadi?
Yes.
Joe Pereira, yes. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Unreal.
Thank you, Craig.